Story time about how I did the dirty with my cousin. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I repeat, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. Okay, before you all judge me, I come from a very small town. Very small. Background, my entire family and I come from a very small town. For miles and miles around us, there is nothing. The only thing around us to do is really just go to the mall. Growing up, my cousin and I weren't really close. He was always trying to bother me and he was always mean. I also didn't have siblings, but my dad did have kids with another woman, so I had a couple of stepsisters. But growing up, my stepsisters would compete with me in everything, school and boys. Our school only had 80 kids in it. So by the time I turned 17, the only boy that I was ever interested in ended up moving away from my town. And this boy didn't even know that I existed. At this point, my cousin had gone away for a couple of years, but then came back. And when he came back, the attraction was instant. I know you guys all want to gag right now, but like I said, I had no other options for boys. Remember I said my cousin used to bother me a lot? Well, one day he came up to me in school and apologized. And we both knew we were attracted to each other, so we just kept talking. One day he just grabbed me and kissed me. Part 2 is up. Story time about how I did the dirty with my cousin. Disclaimer, it's not my story time. I repeat, this is not my story time. It's sent me on Instagram. My cousin kissed me for the first time that day. By the way, we were in school. He asked me to go behind one of the buildings in school. Out of nowhere, he grabbed me and kissed me. This was the first time I'd ever been kissed. So instantly, I was infatuated. And then after that, every single day we would go behind that building and kiss some more. And trust me, we both had conversations all the time about how we were cousins. But the problem was there was nobody in our town that we were interested in. So his parents, who are my uncles, suddenly they started inviting my parents over to their house. So we would all go have dinner at their house and hang out sometimes. And my cousin and I would take advantage and go make out in his room. No one ever thought to check on us. I mean, why would they? We're cousins. One of those times that we went over, we did the dirty. My cousin just started going for it and I didn't stop him. I wanted him to do it. All while our parents are downstairs. And then we kept doing it every day. After about a year, he had to move away for school. And to this day, nobody knows what we did. I haven't seen him in about 5 years, but trust me, if we saw each other again, I think we would do it again. Is that gross? I mean, I know it is, but whatever. Bye. Story time about how I found out my husband was hooking up with men off of Craigslist. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It's sent me on Instagram. My husband and I have been married for 5 years. This man is the most prudish person I have ever met in my entire life. He never curses. He does not drink. Basically, he's never done anything naughty in his life. When we met, he was the perfect candidate for me. My parents are very religious and very strict. When they saw the way my husband was, basically super uptight, never wanting to do anything fun, they insisted that I marry him. So basically, this is all my parents' fault. To be honest with you guys, I never really was super attracted to him, but I knew that he would be a good provider. He's pretty high up in the company he works for, and he makes north of $300,000 per year. But I do own 2 of my own businesses, so it's not like I need him to survive. But my parents insisted on me marrying somebody who was already well off. And of course, one of my dreams is to become a mother, so I need a man who's going to be able to provide for me and my kids, especially when I'm pregnant. So we ended up getting married. Was there passion and chemistry? Not so much. But we did have a good time, and he would make me laugh. We essentially became really good friends. Up until I found some stuff on his laptop. Part 2 is up. Part 2 of how I found out my husband was hooking up with men off of Craigslist. Disclaimer, is not my story time. It's me on Instagram. One day while I was working from home, I needed to get on his laptop to check our cameras. I just gotten a new set of security cameras for our house. I needed to make sure that they were all working. I opened his laptop, typed in the password, and it was wrong. It always had the same password for the past 5 years. I didn't bother texting him. Instead, I tried to guess. And because I know this man so well, I guessed it in the first try. But as soon as I log in, there's about 5 Craigslist windows open, all with similar titles. Male looking for male. Male interested in male company. This literally shook me to my core. You're telling me that I'm married to a gay man and that he's hooking up with men off of Craigslist? That's when I went ahead and checked his email, only to find that he had been sending pictures and other things to these men. Not only that, but he had met with 2 of them. I instantly printed out all the evidence. Like I said in part 1, I'm not particularly attracted to my husband. I never have been. I really only married him because my parents pressured me into it. Here's what I did. Instead of just asking for a divorce, I wanted to humiliate him. I needed to make him pay. After printing everything out, I sent it to his job. And I sent it to his parents and my parents. Part 3 is up. That's when I sent videos of my own husband hooking up with other men to his job, my parents, and his parents. At this point, I had been married to a man that I wasn't attracted to for 5 years, only to find out that he was hooking up with other men. Off of Craigslist. Remember I said in part 1 how prudish my husband was? He always made himself seem like he was the perfect man, like he had never done anything bad in his life. But let me tell you, some of the things I read in those emails, and the pictures, and the video, disgusting. No wonder he put off having kids for so long, and no wonder he made me get on the pill, because he never had the intention of having kids. When everyone received their packages, my husband called me super upset. He said that he had only done it for about a week, and that it was just him experimenting. And he told me that his job put him on suspension. My parents, of course, stopped speaking to him. My mother-in-law calls me on the phone and tells me that she had always known that he was gay. And apparently they insisted on him not marrying me. But he was set on having the perfect wife. The perfect life. We're obviously getting a divorce now, and I'm getting all his money. Or at least I'm gonna try. He's already claiming that I'm obsessed with him, so he wants to get a restraining order. I need to make him suffer even more. How should I do this? Part 4 will be up soon. Story time about how my father bribed my boyfriend to not break up with me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, it's on my Instagram. Unfortunately, I have a lot of anxiety and I'm a very, very shy person. So it's always been hard for me to find friends and even harder to date men. I'm 37 and I've only ever been on one date. I come from a Latin family and this is unforgivable to them. Since I turned 20, my family has always asked me every single day of my life when I'm gonna find a man. As you can imagine, this adds even more to my anxiety because I just feel extremely pressured. Remember that one date I went on? Well, that was actually set up through my parents. I was 25 years old and my mom started getting personal training. Her personal trainer is the one she set up the date with. And this guy was a nightmare. He was rude to the waiters of the restaurant we went to, and immediately after that I just left. I didn't even give him a second chance. As you can imagine, my parents were furious. My mom actually told me that she wanted me to marry this guy, and I was like, have you met him? I've always been completely misunderstood. Fast forward to me being 37, I landed my dream job in New York City and I moved away from home. I was happy being independent and moving away from my parents. I even lost my virginity and I was happy about it. Part 2 is up. Story time about how my father bribed my boyfriend to not break up with me. Disclaimer, is not my story time, it's on Instagram. Finally lost my virginity at 37 years old. I was living by myself in New York City and I had finally moved away from my toxic parents. But my parents would call me every single day. And guess what they would ask? Did you finally meet someone at work? Apparently, I was about to meet somebody at work that I would marry. So this is how I met the guy I lost my virginity to. At work. I guess my parents were right. I work in fashion and marketing and every day I went to work I had to dress up really well. And it was fun. Again, for the first time in my life, I was coming out of my shell. One of the editors at my job started noticing me. He invited me out to coffee and told me he wanted to show me the ropes. This was the first time that I found myself really attracted to a man. As you can imagine, I was so down. Ended up going to a bar and having wine together. After that, everything is a blur. I know that I kissed him and he kissed me back. That's when he asked me to go on a second date. And on the second date, we did it. I ended up losing my virginity and I called my parents and told them. This actually made them very happy. But now they said I had to marry the guy. But guess what? This guy wanted to be my boyfriend. And we started dating. But then I found something out. Part 3 is up. Story time about how my dad bribed my boyfriend to not break up with me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, it's on me on Instagram. But that's when I found out that my boyfriend was bi. One day he just tells me that he's attracted to men. At this point, we'd been together for 6 months. This obviously broke my heart because he didn't tell me before. And also, my parents would never accept that. This man was basically asking me for an open relationship. He even told me that I should consider myself lucky that he didn't go cheat on me. This all rubbed me the wrong way. Even though I was in love with him, I knew that I couldn't accept that. But at my age, can I really afford to say no to a man? I finally ended up telling him that I don't think I would be comfortable with an open relationship. He instantly broke up with me. I called my parents to tell him and they were upset. That's when my father took it upon himself to call my boyfriend and tell him that he would pay him $6,000 to stay with me. And guess what my boyfriend did? This man accepted. He took $6,000 and stayed with me for another year. Exactly a year later on Christmas, my father tells me that I should be grateful to him. When I asked him why, he said, well, I paid him to stay with you. And you're happy now, aren't you? Should I break up with my boyfriend and break ties with my family?